Each year, our government determines that more and more of its communication is classified. At the same time, that same government is trying to find out more and more of our secrets. Who has secrets? We all do. Who can we trust with the secrets of our lives? Should we trust anyone? Let's consider communication within a faith community as a type of protected speech. Daniel Ellsberg. Between 1968 and 1971, I repeatedly broke a solemn formal promise that I made in good faith, not to reveal to any unauthorized persons information that I received through certain channels and under certain safeguards, collectively known as the classification system. I had signed many secrecy oaths or contractual agreements over the years as a Marine officer, as an employee of the RAND Corporation, and later as the highest level employee of the Department of Defense and the Department of State. All of them were blanket promises never to give any information that was identified as safeguarded, secret, or classified to a person who did not have a proper security clearance for it, moreover, explicitly authorized by a higher authority to receive it. Implicit in these promises not to reveal information was that I would obey this commitment no matter what the information might be, even if it revealed evidence of official lies, crimes, planning for war, in violation of ratified treaties of the U.S. Constitution, or planned violations of laws made by Congress. Even if unauthorized persons or agencies were officials of the legislative and judicial branch who vitally needed that information to carry out their constitutional function and had a legitimate right to learn the truth. Even if an election, congressional investigation, or vote that decided issues of war and peace might be affected by public ignorance or by my silence, and obedient lies about my government's secret actions and plans. And even if countless people had died and were continuing to die because the information was being wrongfully withheld by my own colleagues and superiors under a policy of secrecy and deception. That is how I was meant to understand those promises. And for many years, I followed the rules. And of course, they were not explicitly spelled out in these terms in the papers I signed, nor were they told to me in briefings. If they had been, they would have given me a good deal of pause, to say the least. Would I have signed those contracts regardless? Probably. At least in the beginning, which was in the mid and late 1950s. Government secrets had been so well kept by so many people before me that as a young citizen, I was unaware that I might ever be confronted with such problematic information in the service of the U.S. government. Eventually, I came to know better, though it was still many years before I began copying secret information and giving it to the U.S. Congress and the press. It got real quiet in here when I was reading that. So I know it's a scary time between Halloween and Election Day, so I was determined not to get nervous at all. Being a lay speaker, you don't have the opportunity to do this that often, so it has nothing to do with me imagining you in your underwear or anything like that. But I just realized that no matter how bad I do, you can't fire me, right? Right? Okay. And the second thing, I know most of you don't leave before you get your coffee, so there's that. Oh. I'd like to tell you some secrets this morning, but you have to promise not to tell. Do you promise not to tell? Yes. You know, I didn't hear all of you. Do you promise not to tell? This is serious. Okay, some secrets for you. When I was little, my dad told me that polyester was a small animal that lived in Australia, and they would kill it to make clothes. That night, I sat in my room reading the labels on all my clothes and for hours and threw out all the ones that had polyester on it. Another one? When working at my job, I don't use sugar-free syrup when I make those lattes for skinny and pretty girls. I make them as fattening as possible. This one a little more sober. I have been planning my husband's funeral for 24 years. I said these were secrets. I did not say they were my secrets. They are the secrets of others. In fact, there's a website you can go to and read lots of secrets. Anybody know what website I'm talking about? How many of you have been on Post Secret before? Okay, keep your hands up. These are all the people wasting time at work. Okay, I know. Some serious, some humorous, just a couple more that I just had to share. When I was little, I thought I had the power to change stoplights. And when my parents were going to get a divorce, I made a bargain with God. He could take my power if they stayed together. They're still married, and I can't change stoplights. I know, that was kind of awe, wasn't it? Okay. I am a firefighter, and I'm afraid that the day might come when I'm not as brave as I'm supposed to be. The reason I joined the football team was so I could see everyone naked. Again, these aren't my secrets. I'm just sharing you what other people have said. Yeah. And just one more. When my husband stops breathing in his sleep, I don't wake him anymore. I figure I'll just let nature take its course. So, Barbara, thanks for sharing. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to. No, just kidding. Every year, the federal government asks a select group of Americans to keep a secret or secret. Last count, there were over 5 million in this group. No doubt there's a few here today who have a government security clearance. And each year, the government creates millions of secrets. These are called classified documents. Last year, 100 million documents were classified. And why? The answer is national security. The rationale is simple. If you tell this secret, the information contained may fall into the wrong hands, and you could, without intending it, harm the security of the United States. The price tag to classify all of this speech, according to NPR recently, is in the tens of billions of dollars annually. But what if the information you have, if released, could save a person's life? You're not allowed to tell. The lives of many, you still can't tell. You've received no permission to be discreet. Your judgment cannot be taken into consideration. This kind of situation turns into an amorality that folks like Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Daniel Ellsberg, and others could not live with. And so they became whistleblowers or leakers, fugitives, defendants, and prisoners. In a related story, a group of congressmen last year pushed President Obama to fire the head of the NSA, James Clapper, who they said misled Congress about NSA surveillance. Director Clapper continues to hold his position despite lying to Congress under oath. When he was asked whether the NSA collected any type of data at all on hundreds of millions of Americans, he said no, not wittingly. It's interesting that Edward Snowden told the truth and will be arrested if he returns to this country. Yet Clapper lied to Congress and the American people and is in the cabinet. Considering the volume of documents the government classifies and the degree of surveillance it collects on its citizens, we seem to have come to a place where our government wants us to know less and less of what it does and wants to know more and more of what we do and say. What happens when you promise not to tell and you do? What if it's for a good reason? Are there secrets worth keeping and others that shouldn't be kept? The opening reading concerns the Pentagon Papers. They were a series of sensitive documents detailing Americans' involvement in Vietnam. Daniel Ellsberg gave them without permission to Senator Mike Gravel from Alaska, who introduced them into Senate testimony and finally were published by Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill is, of course, a commie leftist publishing shadow organization owned by the Unitarian Universalist Church. And Gravel also, Senator Gravel, affiliated with the UU. Both Gravel and Ellsberg more than once spoke at UU annual conventions. As an aside to the connection here, the First Unitarian Church in Los Angeles has brought suit against the NSA for spying, claiming that by spying on organizations like the First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles, people are uneasy about coming together, threatening First Amendment privilege. This particular church has been harassed over the years by the FBI, and you can read the entire story by the current pastor, Rick Hoyt, in the latest edition of the UU World magazine. And lest you think that government surveillance is kind of just casual, the initial Freedom of Information request turned up over 5,000 pages of classified material on that one UU church alone. Sometimes I wish we were engaged in activity so radical that they were listening in on us. And other times, I don't. Could the government be listening today? Yes? Could there be a secret dossier on us? Might those tree swallows be small government drones outside? This shouldn't deter us from our social justice action. We can proudly say that we are the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Jersey Shore, and my name is Michael Clough. You're younger. I would never survive Guantanamo, Michael. Never. So. Let's consider another lawbreaker. In the book of Galatians in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul was being accused of antinomianism. A big word, but it comes from two little Greek words, anti, against, and nomos, the law. Paul was being accused of being a breaker of the Jewish law, which could carry severe penalties, just short of death back then. The actions of him and his associates in the early Christian church appeared to some in the established Jewish community as flaunting the laws of Judaism. Paul explained in the letter to the Galatians that freedom in Christ freed people from the burden of religious law. He was speaking of a higher law. And there is that higher law. I was thinking about this and remembering back to one of Pastor Charlie's sermons from last year when he talked about the moral development theories of Gilligan and Lawrence Kohlberg. How, much like every other stage of our lives, morally we develop in stages as well. And in the highest level that very few of us reach, that stage operates with a universal perspective. That goes beyond what any government jurisdiction may say, but deals with the universality of right and wrong. The actions of a king or a Gandhi, the Apostle Paul, Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, can be interpreted against a backdrop. Appearing on one level to break the law, yet acting on the demands of a higher one. Leading some people to lobby for Edward Snowden to be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize last year, and other people claiming for his head, traitor, lock him up. We learn early in life about secrets, don't we? Usually in our families. I also learned that sisters do not make good confidants. I was about 12 years old when my sister caught me smoking. Had to get that out there. Where did you get that? I stole it, I replied nonchalantly. From who? Should I tell her my secret? She looked so innocent. And I felt like bragging. I said, I'll tell you, but you must promise never to tell anyone. Oh, I promise. She looked so believable. I stole it from Dad. Oh, Dad. I said, I do it all the time. Aren't you afraid? Hey, I'm not the only one that stole cigarettes from their dad. Don't look so shocked out there, okay? I told her I did it all the time, and she says, aren't you afraid that he'll catch you? Nope. I was suddenly feeling like the man, the 12-year-old man. Well, here's how it's done. And I launched into an elaborate explanation of the specifics. It says, first off, you never want to create a crime scene. I was way ahead of Dexter on this one. If he knows one is missing, things could get pretty ugly. So when you see that new pack of Luckies on his dresser, and I don't even know if they make Luckies anymore, I don't know. It says, don't take one out of that new pack. You have to wait until there's only about half a pack there. You know, they're rolling around in there. He hasn't quite figured out how many there is. That's when you snatch one. He'll never miss one, and he hasn't so far. Boy, I felt really good about myself then. She said, wow. I felt like Robert Wagner on that show back then. It Takes a Thief, thank you. My plan. I forgot all about it, but guess who didn't? It was a couple weeks later on one of those forced family car rides. Two youngest of my 5 siblings rode in the front seat between the parents. That's when you could do that way back then. You stuff as many in the car as possible. I know a lot of you grew up like that. That left the 4 oldest ones to share the back seat. And you never know how these things start, pushing, shoving, invading someone's space. But what I do remember is rapping on my sister's head just a little too hard. I wasn't always a kind brother. She still speaks to me, though, just so you know. So she yelled, "Dad!" And I knew what she was going to complain about. Or I thought I knew. I thought she was going to say, "He hit me." And I was going to say, "Well, she hit me first," right? But she went in a completely different direction. And after she said, "Dad," she said, "Do you know what he did?" And then she was here behind my dad. She looks over at me and goes like this. Oh my God. My life flashed before my eyes. If he found out that cigarettes were being stolen by his oldest son, there would be a crime scene in that car. And I don't know, did you ever grow up with the threat that, like, if you do that one more time, I'm going to pull this car right over? Do you remember that? My dad pulled cars over. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. And I remember just putting my hands together and praying to the only God important at that time, my 10-year-old sister, and mouthing the words, "I'll do anything." She did not tell on me. But I remember doing a lot of cat litter box duty, laundry, dishes. I think I owe her. I don't know. It's in the families that we get our first taste of secrets, telling them and holding them, and the importance of them. The word secret sounds so ominous. Let's just call it privileged information or holding confidences. And I'm not talking about non-disclosure of abusive situations, but the sort of things in our families that are stories or episodes or memories where family and friends and their incidents are hold dear. So why do we hold them close? The law recognizes at least 5 different categories of relationships that withholding full disclosure in court is protected. The physician-patient, the attorney-client, the therapist-patient, the clergy-communicant, and the married couple. In fact, in these relationships, under most situations, you cannot be compelled by a court to testify. Although I think sometimes between husbands and wives, they just do it willingly. "Excuse me, ma'am, we found this bloody hammer in your garage. Can you tell us about this?" "I sure can tell you about that bloody hammer. He tried to clean that off with one of my good dish towels." I could just hear that. I never saw that episode on Law & Order, but I bet it's there. The reason for privilege is so we may disclose ourselves fully and freely to another. Theoretically, this leads to healthy relationships. The law recognizes that when the patient has complete guarantee of privacy in communication with their physician, things will be shared that will promote the health and well-being of that person. Open communication with your lawyer allows a person to be completely open, securing the best legal representation. And so it is with each of the protected relationships. In fact, clergy can be sued if they disclose confidences that lead to injury. If the positive side of these are recognized and protected, can you imagine the wholeness and healing that takes place as well? And we might be able to see where we might be able to go with this. Is there something special that we have in common? Are there special ties that bind us together? Is there some expectation that we are here for each other in ways that are unique? If so, then open and deep and selective communication can and should have a positive effect. Members of a faith community do not have illegal immunity from testifying. Yet there's kind of an all for one and one for all feel when we're involved in groups like this. It's not membership, although membership is important. It's not simple attendance, although that's important as well. It's all of us who contemplate over those 7 principles and think, this makes sense. And we begin to decide that this is our place, and you and we are their people, where everyone knows your name, mostly because you're wearing a name tag, but we begin to care about each other. We know Big Brother is listening, bulk collecting data on our emails, phone calls, web patterns, library usage, and even as the New York Times reported just this week, the U.S. Postal Service received 100,000 requests from the government to track our snail mail. My mail is not very interesting. I don't know about yours. What if Rick Hoyt is right? What if in a climate that permits the government to spy on its own people in unprecedented ways, we become reluctant to assemble together, hesitant to communicate meaningfully? Are we talking to each other? Are we listening to each other? I'd like to bring up 2 complementary skill sets in closing: basic speaking and basic listening. First, speaking. Our secrets need not be shameful, although many are painfully so. Our secrets usually speak of an aspect of what has happened to us, things we cannot forget and dare not share. This makes self-disclosure a real act of bravery. Never easy, but sometimes necessary. Sylvia Plath captured this feeling perfectly in her journal. She said, "And when at last you find someone to whom you feel you can pour out your soul, you stop in shock at the words that you utter. They are so rusty, so ugly, so meaningless and feeble from being kept in the small and cramped dark inside you for so long." And what we choose to divulge about ourselves says a great deal about what we expect or hope others will receive. The threat of being found out and then ostracized and abandoned is balanced by the hope that through disclosure, I will be understood or strengthened or accepted. Are we good listeners? Have we become proficient in quieting the voices of yesterday, silencing the ones concerning tomorrow, and being present for those who are present? Do we sometimes talk to folks looking over their shoulder to see who might be moving our way, someone that we just got to talk to? You don't have to raise your hands, but how many of us come on a Sunday morning with a mental list of these are the people I got to talk to today? Maybe we need some mindfulness. There's a disturbing phenomenon in some faith communities that as the difficulties in a person's life increases, their participation in that community decreases. Divorce, illness, job loss, the messy, painful stuff of life, not easily shared and not easily listened to. Can we agree on the importance of listening and the need to become better at it? Good. I have some suggestions. Just a few. And here I know I've crossed the line from preaching into meddling, but I'm going for it. How about this? For the first 10 minutes after service, forget you're on a committee. Except for Richard, the coffee has to be out on time. And how about practicing the 3-second rule? When someone says something to you, before you respond right away, count to 3. Not out loud. They might get the wrong impression and walk away. 1, 1,000, 2. But letting them know as you pause that you're really listening. And the other rule of thumb for listening is asking those follow-up questions. At least 3. Before you launch off into, oh yeah, and me too, and then take over the conversation, ask follow-up questions. We used to get this drill when I was in high school in basketball. If the team was shooting particularly poorly, we weren't allowed just to go down the other end of the court and fire up a shot. We had to make at least 3 passes to other people before a shot could be taken. So let's do that in conversation. If we're talking to someone and you ask, how was your week? And they say, rough. And you say, yeah, me too. And you describe your latest peril, you've just missed an opportunity to grow closer to that person. We even have a document that lays out a brief schematic for healthy interaction, the covenant of right relations. And it says this in closing: to foster communication among ourselves by providing an atmosphere of openness, honesty, and safety, and by ensuring that while listening respectfully, we take care to hear every voice. To build trust in one another by behaving with integrity in our relationships, by being accountable for our actions and reactions, and by respecting confidences. I'd like to close with this poem by Laura Hershey. I know it's been used before, but I couldn't find a better one, and it just says so much. Telling. What you risk telling your story, you will bore them. Your voice will break, your ink will spill and stain your coat. No one will understand. Their eyes will become fences, and you will park yourself forever on the outside. Your differentness, once and for all revealed, dangerous. The names you give to yourself will become epithets. Your happiness will be called bravery or denial, and your sadness will justify their pity. Your fear will magnify their fears. Everything you say will prove something about their God or their economic system. Your feelings that change day to day, kaleidoscope, will freeze in place and brand you forever, justify anything they decide to do with you. Those with power can afford to tell their story, or not. Those without power risk everything to tell their story, and must. Someone somewhere will hear your story and decide to fight, to live and refuse compromise. Someone else will tell her own story, risking everything. May we be brave when we speak, purposing to share the real stuff of our lives. Be patient as we listening, deciding to be more interested and less interesting, listening deeply to each other, treasuring securely that which has been entrusted, sharing selectively as it fosters growth, peace, and healing. Thank you.